Good morning, Chicago. This is In the Loop. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Mayor Brandon Johnson is back in the studio for our monthly series, Ask the Mayor. He'll spend the entire hour answering your questions and ours. And we want to hear from you, so give us a call right now. That number is 866-915-WBEZ. Again, 866-915-9239. As always, I've got my housekeeping notes to start. I want you to keep your questions respectful and brief so that we can get to as many callers as possible this hour. Our producers are ready to answer your calls, and they're looking for substantive questions, not just comments for Mayor Johnson. Now, if we do get to your call on the air, please quickly say hello and ask your question in roughly 15 seconds so that the mayor can answer you. Mayor Johnson, welcome back to the studio.
Hey, thank you for having me back, and congratulations.
Thank
the Loop,
you.
in the morning.
In the mornings. Good to see you at 9 a.m.
Likewise.
Let's dive in. So in the city, we've got heightened anxiety right now. We're anxiety-filled. ICE activity with this so-called Operation Midway Blitz has shown us roughly 30 arrests across the region right now. On Friday, an immigrant was fatally shot in Franklin Park, and ICE is saying that an agent was severely injured in the midst of that incident. Your reaction, Mayor, to how the enforcement has been going?
Well, let me just first of all say that I'm grateful to all of the residents of the city of Chicago that have stood firm alongside of me as we protect our status as a welcoming city. Our local law enforcement has done an incredible job under the leadership of Superintendent Larry Snelling to continue to make sure that we are implementing constitutional policing and creating opportunities for folks to engage and build trust. And the Welcoming City Ordinance allows for that trust to be maintained. Now, what's coming from the federal government is the antithesis to what we're building in Chicago. It's unfortunate that this president has politicized something that, quite frankly, we all can agree that there is a broken immigration system that needs to be prepared at the congressional level. And this administration, along with Congress, has abdicated its responsibility. And so it's the way it's played out over the weekend. We experienced this incredible tragedy. Those outside of Chicago and Franklin Park, I believe these interactions should not end in death. And so we've called for an investigation and full transparency so all of the people of Chicago, Chicagoland, and the state of Illinois can understand exactly what happened in that situation. This man was a father. He worked and pay taxes, quite frankly, and it's an absolute tragedy.
Yeah, on that note, the Mexican consulate in Chicago is also calling for that full investigation. This is into the fatal shooting death of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. Governor Pritzker said that, quote, "We don't have the ability to have state or local resources focused on investigating the federal law enforcement agencies." Do you agree with that?
Well, the jurisdiction, of course, that's responsible in this situation is the federal government. This is something that they should be calling for. The Consul General, Reina Torres Mendivil, she's an incredible ambassador on behalf of the Mexican government. But this is something that all of us as residents of this city, this state, this, quite frankly, the country, should want all of the details whenever there is a law enforcement involved shooting that leads to someone's death. Mm-hmm. We have to know exactly what happened in that scenario.
So in the case of Mr. Villegas Gonzalez, who's going to investigate the shooting?
It's a good question. Again, this is something that falls under the jurisdiction of the federal government, but it doesn't stop us from advocating for a full investigation.
Do you know how long this so-called blitz is going to last?
I do not know. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that this president refuses to cooperate and work with municipalities across this country because, look, we want, criminals off the streets of cities across America. There are ways in which you can coordinate this effort. I mean, there's no secret that whether it's the Biden administration or the Obama administration, deportation has always been a part of presidential mandates, if you will. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing in this situation is just the opposite of that. You are seeing the provocation of terror and anxiety. And in fact, again, if the president was absolutely serious about getting, this matter under control, he would work with Congress to be able to put forth legislation to actually repair our broken immigration system.
So what's your overall approach then to responding to what's going on?
Well, what we've been doing, right? So first of all, we want to make sure that the people of Chicago know their rights. We've launched a new website that lays out the protection of the residents of our city. I signed an executive order. Today, I'm going to sign another executive order that's going to protect people's First Amendment, their right to be able to protest. You saw in one of the villages in the Chicagoland area where federal agents fired upon protesters, right? And so I'm going to continue to make sure that as a welcoming city that, our law enforcement focuses on the job that it has, right?
Do you think that'll be enough given what's happening and the fact that, people are losing their lives here?
Well, again, I have a responsibility to do my part as mayor of the city of Chicago. I can't speak for what happened in Franklin Park. What I'm simply saying is that people knowing their rights, clearly the way the federal government responded to the people knowing their rights in Chicago, one of the Trump administration, one of his deputies, if you will, described Chicago as well-educated and actually found it quite frustrating. What's enough when you're fighting against tyranny? That's going to be the question that we'll have to answer as a collective. Mm-hmm. We're living in unprecedented times. One thing that I can say for sure, I'm going to use every single tool that is at my disposal to protect the people of this city. And thus far, whether it's the courts, which we have won multiple times, whether it's legislation, which we've reinforced, whether it's through executive order, or whether it's through protests, these are all the actions and activities that have sustained our democracy over decades, right? And so it's just simply this generation's turn to stand up against tyranny.
As we talk about the different jurisdictions involved here, I know ICE limits data about arrests and deportations. So what's the communication like between the city and federal agents about who and where people are being detained right now?
We haven't had any. This is, again, what the problem, this is where the problem lies. There's a lack of transparency from the federal government. Now, look, our local law enforcement has worked with federal agents on a number of issues. I've spoken about this earlier. Just a month or so ago, a little bit over a month ago, we took over 170 high-powered weapons off of the streets of Chicago. Our local law enforcement working with ATF, removing 170 plus illegal guns that have been trafficked in from states like Mississippi, Indiana, Louisiana. These are the type of coordinated efforts that I believe have to be accentuated in order for us to continue to drive crime down in the city of Chicago and throughout this country. If the president was actually sincere about doing just that, he would work collaboratively with local law enforcement. It's actually an affront to our local police department to bypass, local authority when we have the best sense of what's happening on the ground. So I'm going to continue to remain firm as mayor of this city, protecting residents, protecting the rights to protest, protecting our welcoming city status, making sure that we're making critical investments to drive crime down in this city. And so far, that work has been working.
Yeah.
A 30% reduction in homicides, shooting victims are down, robberies are down. This is in no way suggesting that we have accomplished all that we need to accomplish, but we're certainly moving in the right direction.
Crime is certainly down in Chicago. I think that's clear. The data certainly shows that. Are people safe, though? Do they feel safe, Mayor? I'm curious what your neighbors in Austin are saying.
I mean, if you're asking if people have, if we're out of the clear of poverty and violence, I mean, I think that answer is very obvious. There's still more work to be done. Look, this is not just simply about driving violence down in the city of Chicago. This is about improving the quality of life for people. Here's another question that people, I don't know if we always ask. People speak about safety as if it's in isolation of affordable housing, or if it's in isolation of making sure that there's a good neighborhood school that's well-resourced and funded. They speak about safety in isolation around, do we have, secure employment? Growing up in a household with 9 siblings, we had our challenges. But one of the things that made us safe and secure, we at least knew that our father was going to work every day and that we had an opportunity at life. Right now, my goal is to build a safe and affordable city, right? Because the best way in which people can feel secure is when our neighborhoods have all that they need. And until we have made all of the critical investments where we have eliminated poverty, I don't believe that anybody should ever feel secure as long as we have 25% of children under the age of 18 who are hungry. As long as we have thousands of families who go to Chicago public schools who are unhoused. That's the work that I've been leading. That's the work that continues. And in order for us to make sure that our neighbors feel absolutely safe, we have to make sure that we're providing economic opportunities for families so that they can experience the wholeness of what this city has to offer.
Let's go to the phones, Mayor. Prosperity is waiting in Austin. Hey, Prosperity. Welcome to In the Loop.
Hello. How are you today?
Doing well. What's your question for the mayor?
My question is that I have been receiving comments back from police officers as well as sheriffs that are in touch with Chicago police officers, and they are being told that they are to stand down against residents and teens. Can the mayor address that, please, what we are being relayed?
What do you mean by stand down? Could you offer some clarity, Prosperity, and welcome, West Side?
Yes, West Side. What they're saying is that if there's something that they do that is against the law, that the police officers are telling citizens that we can't do anything because the mayor told us not to touch them.
Well, that's first of all, I don't know how that information is moving about. That's inaccurate. If someone is moving outside of the parameters of the law enforcement has the full authority to course correct. I mean, it's so much so that this is why I made critical investments, Prosperity, into our detectives division and detectives bureau. The reason why our clearance rates are higher, I mean, as high as 77%, the highest they've ever been in a decade, is because our frontline officers are providing the necessary detail and information so that we can prosecute folks and hold people accountable. One thing that we're not going to tolerate is individuals terrorizing our communities. If they are working outside of the parameters of the law, they will be held accountable, and our police department has the full authority to administer that authority.
Thank you for your call, Prosperity.
It's always good to start with the West Sider, by the way.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do that every time.
But can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Andrea, Joy, Carissa, Kira, and Mark, those are relatives. They said they're going to call in today. If you see those names, block them.
All right. Our producers just heard you say that, so they are on standby. We're also getting information this morning, Mayor. Customs and Border Patrol agents, they're now in Chicago. They're saying they're here to continue what they started in L.A., which is, what they're calling the operation at large. And, of course, the CBP official who's running the show here, Greg Bavino, tweeted that they're here to, quote, make the city safer by targeting and arresting criminal illegal aliens. Your response?
They have the authority to do that. No one is stopping people from engaging in getting criminals off the streets of Chicago or anywhere else in this country.
Yeah. It's Mexican Independence Day. And we know how much that immigrant community has been targeted in the midst of these operations and these blitz movements. I want to hear, because I saw you, taking part in the raising of the flag yesterday, what you love about the way Mexican and Mexican-American communities shape our city. How do they shape Chicago? And what are the ways that those of us who aren't of Mexican descent can just be allies right now?
Yeah, look, the Mexican-American community is quite vibrant and strong in Chicago. I mean, I've heard numbers as upwards of 70% of the Latinx community in Chicago are Mexicans, Mexican-Americans, and they play a critical role in the soul of Chicago, whether it's in the business community, the arts, the philanthropic community, the education institutions. I think about great leaders like Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia, who came to this country looking for opportunity, and he credits a Black woman educator that helped him make that transition. And now here it is, a lifetime of leadership. When I think about, again, the contributions that the Mexican community has on our economy, let's just look at the 26th Street, as they call it, the Magnificent 2 Mile. I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars that flow through our economy through the Mexican American neighborhoods in Chicago. So, I mean, it's an incredible, vibrant community. And I think those of us who are not Mexican, one of the things that I think we should appreciate is that when we are celebrating the independence of a nation from tyranny, that's something that as Americans, as a democratic society, we should embrace. Anytime we have people groups that are able to express the fullness of their culture and their ethnicity and their nationality to some extent, that we should embrace that, because that is the goal of the world, right? Is for people to be able to live freely in a democratic society without threat of terror, without the threat of tyranny. That's something that I think we all can celebrate.
Yeah. Well, despite weeks of threats and a lot of stirring the pot on social media, President Trump did not send National Guard troops to Chicago after all.
Good.
You relieved?
I don't know if I would describe it that way. Look, until we bend the arc of justice all the way towards righteousness for all, our work is not done. Look, his threats have been ongoing, and it's not just about the city of Chicago. The fact that he is threatening cities like Memphis and St. Louis. The problem is we have a president of the United States of America that is prepared to unleash federal troops against American cities. I just want people just to sit with that for a moment, because not only is it a threat to our democracy, it undermines, I believe, what is sensible about our humanity.
Yeah.
When I think about just the legacy of those of us here in the city of Chicago, a legacy in which Dr. King set up shop on the west side of Chicago, calling for government to be the response for justice, and how Dr. King referred to militarism as a sickness. And so clearly we have not rooted out the full illness and the sickness of militarism in this country, and it's being carried out by an extreme agenda that, quite frankly, is the antithesis, again, to what we have fought for, not just in the city of Chicago, but what we fought for our entire democracy.
We should also not root out the possibility of this happening.
Well,
the possibility of them coming here in the future.
Well, he said it, like he is still fixated on the city of Chicago. And again, the disingenuousness of this president is quite severe. Here's someone who has cut the ATF budget by 30%. This is the law enforcement agency that works with local law enforcement, our Chicago Police Department, under the leadership of Superintendent Snelling, to get illegal guns off the streets of Chicago. These illegal guns are being trafficked in from states that voted for him. Why would you cut 1,465 positions that could actually help lead towards more guns getting off the streets of Chicago? Because that's the problem that we have in cities across America, is that we have the illegal trafficking of high-powered weapons that have been used, where folks who have trafficked these weapons into our cities have profited off of the death and pain and misery that it creates in cities like the one that I'm leading. And so whether he temporarily pauses Chicago but moves with expediency towards our neighbors in other cities, we should never be tolerant. It shouldn't just be about the city of Chicago. This is about protecting what is sensible and what is right about our democracy. This president has shredded this Constitution, and I've made this point emphatically clear. You either support the Constitution or you do not. And in this case, what we are seeing from this president, that is not being checked. There's no balance from the Supreme Court. There's no check. There's no balance from Congress. And so it requires cities like Chicago and leaders across this America to challenge this president, to push back against his tyranny and stand up for what is right.
Back to the phones. Here is Earl in Roseland. Hi, Earl. What's your question for the mayor?
Good morning to the host and good morning, Mayor. How y'all doing?
Doing well, Earl, but we can barely hear you.
Okay. The question is, on TV on the commercial, they got commercials say, if you leave America now.
Yeah, so Earl, let's try and see if we can get you back on the line, because we really can't hear your question. I know you were calling with something regarding the National Guard and whether they were coming here next, but let's move to our next caller and see if we get Earl back a little bit later. Next up, we got Barbara in Westridge. Hi, Barbara. Welcome to In the Loop.
Hi, thank you.
What's your question?
My question for the mayor is, hello, and I've been noticing a lot of, I've been tracking through the years a lot of really black smoke coming from a lot of the CTA buses. So just two questions. How the maintenance schedule looks on those buses, if they're being maintained properly, and more importantly, when is the city's fleet of buses going all electric?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Barbara. So the maintenance is regular and as well as consistent, and we are moving. We've already have released a number of electric buses on the streets of Chicago. In fact, I put forth a declaration about a year ago where all of our public buildings, including both of our airports, are powered by renewable energy. That's using electricity, reducing our carbon footprint on society, right? And so that is the ultimate goal through our 2FM, which handles our fleets, and we're moving towards more electrified vehicles throughout the city of Chicago, not just our buses. That's an ongoing effort. As you could imagine, there are resources that are attached to such an effort. It's one of those things, though, and I'm glad you raised this, Barbara, because, in so many instances, you can save a whole lot more money by making critical investments in the immediate. And this is clearly a situation where, in the long run, making these investments up front will not only save resources for the city of Chicago, but it allows for a more sustainable, greener society, which is of top importance for me. It's why I restored the Department of the Environment, where we are leading these charges to make sure that we're moving towards renewable energy. That's a great question, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. One more caller before we take a quick pause. Here's Stephanie in South Loop. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to In the Loop.
Hi. Hello, Mayor. I'd love to ask what you're thinking of doing regarding e-bikes and e-scooters that have overcome our sidewalks, endangering pedestrians despite the law that would prevent them from doing so.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I believe this came up last month as well. Our intergovernmental affairs, as well as our policy team, is looking at this. I've seen it. I mean, these electrified vehicles are moving at incredible speeds. And it's something that we do have to take a closer look in terms of how we can better regulate how individuals conduct themselves so that we can keep people safe. We want people to use them, but we also want people to use them responsibly. So we're definitely looking into that one. Thank you.
So we'll take a pause. Earl, we will not go back to Earl. We answered Earl's question, basically, about the National Guard troops. So we'll take a pause now. Mayor Johnson's going to stick around. If you haven't yet given us a call, get ready. Pick up the phone right now. Dial 866-915-WBEZ. Again, that number is 866-915-9239. We'll talk more about CTA funding and everything else that's on your mind up next. But first, here's Claire Lane with the latest news headlines. And we're back now with more In the Loop. I'm your host, Sasha-Ann Simons. In the Loop is a brand new show from WBEZ. It's where you'll get connected to the people shaping Chicago. Policymakers, organizers, your neighbors. And they're going to help make sense of what it all means for you. It's news, culture, and conversation with fresh perspectives every weekday morning at 9. Now, In the Loop is also the place where you'll continue to hear our monthly Ask the Mayor series. It's the only place where you can take part in such a unique public conversation. And Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is here with me in studio. Time now to pick up the phone and dial 866-915-WBEZ with your questions. Make sure you keep them respectful and keep them brief so that we can get to as many of you as possible. And if we do get to your call on the air, quickly say hello to the mayor and ask your question in roughly 15 seconds. All right, let's jump back into our chat there about the CTA, Mayor, because the Chicago Transit Authority is also facing a fiscal cliff. That's as if the state does not vote to fund transit. Now, the CTA, as we know, is an independent body, but as mayor, you appoint 4 members to the board. How do you help us understand how you understand your role when it comes to shoring up transit options for Chicagoans?
Well, first of all, let me just say that this is such an important aspect of how we build safe and affordable communities by investing in our public transportation system. Since I've been in office, we've extended the red line. So we have some critical investments that are allowing for the far south side, if you will, to be able to access our public transportation. Just opened up 4 brand new stations on the north side of the city of Chicago, building new stations on the Green Line as well. We're just started a new operation for a downtown stop there at State and Lake. So these investments are critical. Ridership continues to go up. So we want to make sure that we have a world-class public transportation system. What we've seen, though, is that there has been unfortunate negligence over the years. And as a result, it has placed our public transportation system in a vulnerable place. And so the role that I have working with the members that I do appoint is working with the General Assembly, our state reps, our state senators, of course, with the governor to ensure that we receive adequate funding for CTA in particular, right? Because, 80% essentially of the economic prowess, if you will, of our public transportation system is primarily concentrated in the city of Chicago, right? So whether it's Metro, RTA, PACE, CTA is the driving force of our transportation system. Over 300 million riders, that's an 11% increase from the previous year. The numbers that are looking pretty positive this year as well. So I'm going to continue to work behind the scenes with our General Assembly as well as with the governor and, of course, the board members that I do appoint to make sure that we receive adequate funding. Now, I'm also calling on the people of Chicago to call your state rep, to call your state senator. Whether you use public transportation or not, it's such a vital part of how we grow our economy. And that's why we're going to need all residents to engage as well.
We have a lot of people who live in Chicago who don't have a car or can't afford to just hop in an Uber, right? They still need to get to work by bus or by train.
That's exactly right. And so that's why our effort around better streets for buses, to create more express buses, particularly for individuals who are not as close to the L, like where I am, where I live. I'm within walking distance of the Green Line, but we need to have better connectivity. But this also includes the amount of miles that we've created for bike lanes as well, because all of it is connected, ultimately. I've said this before, our city can grow, and we can grow as upwards from 400 to 700,000 more people. But the best way in which we can actually accomplish that is by having a world-class public transportation system. Again, it's one of those things where investing in the front end of this allows for us to save money on the back end. Mm-hmm. And when you do not invest, it actually creates that much more peril. We're seeing this in Philadelphia, right, where cuts, of course, have plagued that particular city. This is something that cities have had to deal with for a very long time. And now we're confronted with this cliff where I'm going to continue to push. I need the residents of the city of Chicago to push alongside of me so that we can get the adequate funding from Springfield.
Let's hear from Elsa in Logan Square. Hi, Elsa.
Hi. I'm actually in South Shore right now. I'm a teacher at South Shore International, and I have my senior global politics class here. You guys want to say hi?
Hi, class.
How cool is that?
Yeah, we have a question that they're going to read you about the CTA.
Hi. I wanted to ask, what are your plans to financially support the CTA becoming a mass transit system instead of a commuter rail system, specifically through rail expansion post the Red Line extension?
Yeah, it's a great question. And congratulations to you and your entire classroom. As I stated before, there's a couple of tracks here. One, we do have to have the adequate investment from Springfield, right? That's the entity that ultimately funds our public transportation systems, right, across the board. Because CTA is such a vital part of our overall public transportation system, it's why we're asking for more equitable funding, right? We're not saying that those other systems don't deserve, right? But I think to the larger part of your question, the connectivity that we have to streamline. And part of the proposal that's in Springfield is to do just that. That if you are riding a PACE bus, you should not have to go through changes to be able to transfer to a CTA line. And so I think it's an excellent question. Part of the reform that's happening in Springfield is to have stronger connectivity and to streamline a system where you don't have to literally go through hoops and hurdles in order to move from Metro, PACE to CTA, RTA. It needs to be a mass transit operation where all of us are connected, because Chicago and Chicagoland has an incredible economic power. And the stronger our mass system is connected, the more we'll be able to benefit from the entire regional economic prowess that we have.
Well,
Excellent question.
Special shout out to Elsa and her class.
Yeah, go
Listening
Elsa.
to WBEZ at
That's
9 a.m.
right.
Look at them.
Especially as a former social studies teacher, history teacher.
I know that
brings
warmed
me-
your heart.
It really did. And the fact that they were all awake and clapping at 9 o'clock in the morning, Elsa doing something right.
Amazing. All right. Our buddy Jason's been waiting. Jason is in East Garfield Park. Hi, Jason. Welcome to In the Loop.
Hi, thanks. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
You just mentioned how Chicago and Chicagoland are like the great economic engine of the state of Illinois, and it was so great to see you and Governor Pritzker work together to push back on all of President Trump's incursions into our city. I'm wondering what kind of partnership you have going forward working on budget-related issues. Federal spending for nonprofits and government entities, local government is getting cut dramatically. It's leaving a huge hole as we enter budget season. So I'm just curious what your partnership is like with the governor on those issues.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Look, there's no secret that the cuts that are looming from the federal government will have an adverse impact on working people and poor people. And here's, what I have worked on since I've been in office, working with the governor as well as our Senate president and our Speaker of the House and both of their caucuses, is that we have to fight for progressive revenue. And the ultra-rich in this state have not put forth their fair share. I mean, it's well documented, right? And if you think about the tax burden of working people, 20% roughly, millionaires about 11%, the tax burden on the ultra-rich is non-existent, quite frankly. And so we are working through a number of progressive revenue ideas that if the state of Illinois, if they're not interested, if you will, or if they don't believe they have the political capital at this time to be able to challenge the ultra-rich and our larger corporations to pay their fair share, I need home rule authority to be able to debate it here locally. There are a number of progressive revenue ideas that require the state to give the city of Chicago the authority to explore them. And that's something that we're working through now in about a month. Actually, a month from today, I'm going to present my budget to the city council, and I'm very committed to making sure that, those with means put more skin in the game, because we have to Trump-proof ourselves, essentially, from the Trump taxes. Now, we do know that the taxes that he put...
Trump-proof.
We have to Trump-proof ourselves, absolutely. We do know that there's a number of taxes that he has proposed, President Trump, that have been deemed illegal. But it doesn't stop this president from doing things illegally, right? Clearly, the law is not necessarily a prohibitor of him moving in a particular direction. And so working with our partners in Springfield, to your point, sir, to ensure that we have Trump-proof measures in place so that we can continue to fund education. We can continue to fund building more affordable homes. We can continue to invest in youth employment. We can invest in our environment. We can invest in our public health and our transportation system. That's what working people are calling for. That's what I'm fighting for.
Let's hear now from Cosmo in Bronzeville. Hi, Cosmo. What's your question for the mayor?
We won't forget that name, Cosmo.
Cosmo in Bronzeville. How you doing?
Good morning, and thank you so much, Sasha-Ann Simons and Mr. Mayor, for doing this unique program. It's heartening to be able to speak directly from your constituency. My question regards county care and health care. In the same vein as the last caller, I'm concerned that federal funding is being cut for states for Medicaid reimbursement and Medicaid subsidies. And my question regards whether the city has any partnership plans with the state to try to bolster up that system.
Yeah, Cosmo, that's an excellent question. So I just spent some time with President Preckwinkle on yesterday discussing a number of things, community safety, and just, again, making sure that the city and the county are working collaboratively with the state of Illinois around these critical issues. Here's the challenge, though, Cosmo. I'm going to be very just direct and honest. That's the only way I know how to be, is that, when it comes to the public health division within the city of Chicago, CDPH, there's a number of programs and services that rely upon federal grants that have been cut off from the city of Chicago. And this is going to be a challenge for county care as well. When I think about many of the safety net hospitals throughout the city of Chicago, whether it's on the west side of Chicago or north side of Chicago, where county care or through the Affordable Care Act where upwards of 75% of patients are able to receive services because of county care, because of the Affordable Care Act. And this is a challenge. Now, here's what the President Trump's administration has done. The cuts that they have put forward in order to give tax breaks to the ultra rich and to billionaires, those cuts won't be immediately felt, right? They have, I guess, they've extended, if you will, the investments up through a certain point, so then you don't feel those immediate cuts, right? So some of these cuts you may not feel until 27, right? And that was intentional, right? To allow them to get through the midterms election. But we're not fooled by that. And we are in constant conversations around, again, generating the necessary revenue so that these services that people rely upon, particularly working people and poor people, that they don't get harmed by, this president.
Let's take a pause. We'll get to more questions with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson after a quick break.
They're working me hard today, Sasha.
Working you today. And now it's time to chat again with Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who is still with us here in studio for our monthly series, Ask the Mayor. So if you've got questions, there's still a little bit of time to squeeze you in. That number is 866-915-WBEZ. Let's jump right in. Kitty has been waiting. Kitty's in Logan Square. Hi, Kitty. Welcome to In the Loop.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
I was wondering, do we have any potential plans for future composting and recycling bins set up on a more mass spread level next to trash and things like that on sidewalks in Chicago?
Yeah, thank you, Kitty, for that question. So I'm smiling because this is something that's so important to my wife, the First Lady, making sure that we are, expanding our opportunities in the city of Chicago for composting and for recycling. This is something that has come up a couple of times in our last budget, our last couple of budget conversations. I fully expect, Kitty, that it will come up again. I believe that this is something that we should be expanding. I mean, we think about environmental justice and, how we can repurpose so many ways in which we can repurpose, and we need to do that at a higher level. We've extended and expanded composting sites as well as, entire investments in Inglewood in particular, where there's this great new operation there, expanded operation, where we're using compost to generate energy. So there's a lot of innovative things that we're doing, working with my Commissioner and Chief Sustainability Officer, Angela Tovar, and working with many environmental justice operations around the city. And again, this is something that I get an earful on a regular basis in my home because this is really important to us as a family. But it's really something that we have to figure out how to expand throughout the city. It's a great investment, and that's something that's going to come up during our budget conversations.
Thanks for your question, Kitty. Up next is Felice in North Park. Hi there. What's your question for the mayor?
Hi, Mayor. Yes, I'm in North Park, and I want to compliment the improvements in River Park by the boat launch and beautiful murals. But my other question is, we're also right across the street from the Migrant shelter on Foster Avenue, and there's a lot of problems. And I know Alderman Nugent just had an article in the Tribune about what should be done. And so I guess my question is, what is the plan for the migrant population and the homeless in this shelter up here?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And this is something that I'm incredibly grateful for the people of Chicago that have responded to this mission. And one of the things that we are doing is that we will continue to work with the state as we've expanded our shelter footprint, right? There are more shelter beds that we have in place. It's not a perfect system yet, but it's a one system initiative that we have. It's the first of its kind. Never have we had a system where no matter who you are, you can find shelter. We're also working to build non-congregant settings, right, so that we can bring more dignity as we create a pathway for families to become self-sustained. And then, of course, the larger plan is to build more affordable units. This has been, as you know, has been an ongoing challenge in the city of Chicago for a very long time. And that's why I've invested a couple of months ago over $40 million into our shelter systems so that we can build out these systems so that people who are homeless can have access to spaces so that they can ultimately build towards independence. It's, again, another challenge that we're going to have during this budget conversation. However, there's commitment at the state level as well to continue to coordinate with us, whether it's in the 39th Ward. I spoke to the 33rd Ward Alder the other day ago around similar dynamics. So it's something that is top of mind for me, and we're going to continue to invest in our city so that people don't have to live without, stable and affordable housing.
Yeah. Before we get back to the calls, I want to shout out two folks who called earlier, couldn't stay on the line, Patty and Marjorie in Edgewater. They both had a similar question. So I want to pose that to you now, Mayor. Both were asking about upzoning being done in Edgewater. Essentially, they want to know what your plan is and if you're meeting with local neighborhood groups about this.
Yeah, this is something through our community engagement division of the mayor's office that we're committed to having these conversations. I think the ultimate goal is to make sure that we get full community response, but to understand the full impact of all of our decisions that we make, particularly around zoning, especially at a time in which the ultimate goal is to use our zoning apparatus to develop and build communities without gentrification, but also to do it in a way that is strategic. So, absolutely, Patty and Marjorie, if they would like, I'm happy to have someone from our community engagement division reach out so that we can have more substantive conversations around full community impact as well as benefit for how we zone and rightfully develop out our communities.
Let's hear now from Matt. Matt's at Midway Airport.
Oh, wow.
Hi, Matt. Welcome to In the Loop.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
My question is, I live on a residential street. It's marked 5-ton load limit, and I got semis up and down the residential street. The residential street is 59th Street. It's residential from Western Avenue to Cicero, and every day there's these big semis with containers. They got to weigh 45 tons. So how much are the fines for a 45-ton truck on a 5-ton limit? And why is the Department of Weights and Measurements the same department that does the scales in the grocery stores and the gas stations? How come they only work 9 to 5 and the truckers are breaking the laws 24/7?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. I'm definitely going to make sure we bring this back to our CDOT to take a look at what you've just described between Western and Cicero along 59th. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Matt. On now to Kareem, who's in Roseland. Hi, Kareem. What's your question for the mayor?
Hi, good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
So it's been exciting to see the transit-served developments being announced and planned in our communities. And my question is, are we going to pass that additional dwelling unit ordinance that would help private owners to piggyback off of that development and continue to the city with more affordable housing that way?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Kareem. That's the goal. Look, we're on pace, Kareem, to build 10,000 affordable units by the end of my first term, but we have a long way to go. And I'm glad you're calling from Roseland. We've identified vacant land that was turned over to a community-based organization where we're building more affordable homes. The more units that we build, the more we can better regulate the pricing of rent and housing. The average price of a home in New York and Los Angeles, we're talking over $1 million, $900,000. Same thing with rent, $4,500, $4,200 a month. Here in Chicago, rent $1,200, not where we ultimately want it to be, but it comparatively to the other major cities. Same thing with a home, anywhere from $250,000 to $350,000 a year. We want to be able to hit that sweet spot, right? And one of the ways in which we can do that is, through attics and basements, as they call them, granny flats. We want to create a pathway that allows for us to build more units. And so call your alder and let them know that this is the right way to build more affordable units so that we can keep the city of Chicago on pace to be the safest, most affordable big city in America.
We're going right up to the minute here, Mayor. I'm squeezing another caller in. Here's Akash in Skokie.
Hey, Sasha, and I love the show. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
My one question for you, Mayor, is as someone who lives in Skokie, I'd like to know, what are you doing to make public transportation more accessible for the visually impaired and blind population in Chicago, but more importantly, convenient and reliable? Because they don't find it very convenient to take public transportation to get them places.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll start with the convenient and reliable. We have to invest more in our public transportation system, and that's why I'm going to work hard. I'll give you my word to ensure that the city of Chicago receives its equitable distribution and share the resources from Springfield. As we have expanded the red line, as we continue to invest in the green line as well, accessibility is the top priority. Our expansion south, as well as the new stations north, all of them are more accessible. This is a challenge that we've had in Chicago for a very long time. We're addressing it. We're doing it with a level of expediency that I believe is appropriate, and there's more work to be done, and we have to do it faster. So, though you live in Skokie, you could have a representative or a senator or a representative that touches Chicago as well as Skokie. Call them up and let them know that you fully support our efforts to fully fund a transportation system that allows for more reliability and accessibility.
The Taste of Chicago is returning to its July slot next year. You're cheering, fist in the air.
Yes. I mean, listen, there's nothing more Chicago. Well, there's a number of things, but the Taste of Chicago, I remember growing up, and it was during that 4th of July week. We're working on some dates in July. We had tremendous success this last Taste of Chicago. People are coming back. One of the things that maybe it's just nostalgic, as mayor of the city of Chicago, I want to make sure that the things that brought excitement and has allowed for the strength of our reputation to be maintained, we have to do those things that are Chicago. And so the Taste of Chicago, we're looking at some July dates.
What if NASCAR returns? Is the Taste going to move back to September?
I mean, let me just say it like this. We're going to prioritize all of the things that allow for Chicago to continue to be the world-class city that it is. But Chicago and Taste, you got to do that in the summer.
We got some good news recently, which we talked about on In the Loop yesterday. Our colleague Kristen Schorsch reported Chicago's life expectancy. Chicagoans, it's largely back to pre-COVID levels. Yeah. New city data is showing that the stark life expectancy gap between Black Chicagoans and residents of other races, that's also shrunk, but there's still a ways to go there. How are you working with the Chicago Department of Public Health to help fix that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of things. One, mental and behavioral health care services, environmental justice, and economic justice. We can tackle those three things.
Yeah.
It allows for life expectancy to extend.
Because with the federal social safety nets like Medicare and food stamps being cut.
Yeah, medicine and food being cut, we have to fill that gap, and we have to challenge, again, those with means to put more skin in the game so that we can protect ourselves from the Trump taxes.
We'll leave it there. That's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Thank you so much. How did 9 o'clock feel for you?
Oh, it felt great, and congratulations to the next show. You got have
Mary
some great
Dixon
programming
and
coming
Smith.
up. Yeah.
Yes. Say More is coming up. Thank you, Mayor.
You're
we'll
welcome.
See you next month.
I'll be here.
And of course, that's it for today's In the Loop. Tomorrow on the show, Senator Dick Durbin's announcement in April that he would not seek re-election has prompted a scramble of Democrats vying to succeed the Senate Democratic whip. Now, with the Illinois primary 6 months away, we're going to size up the candidates racing to replace Durbin in D.C. Plus, we'll dive into the history of Chicago clout. What is it, and what remnants of it still exist in the city's politics today? I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. Thank you again for listening. Have a wonderful day. That's right, Say More with Mary and Pat. Up next.